It's lights out on the pit wall. Welcome to our Fantasy Formula One podcast. I'm your host, Jeanmark, and accompanying me are my handsome knights in racing armor, my bro, Dominick, and my father, Dr. David Kessler. So tonight is one of those times where we have to realize that we've still got 2 weeks before our next race. So we're going to be talking about things that pertain to what has been going on in Fantasy Formula One in the middle of this 3-week break between races. Let me kick it out to seeing our stats for our Fantasy Formula One drivers. We've got 2 weeks before our next GP, but we've seen a lot of movement. The main thing that is unique to Fantasy Formula One is called dynamic pricing. And I've listed on our chart from top cost down to bottom cost for drivers, and then on the right, top cost, the bottom cost for constructors. And that's by million with the decimal system. So it'd be like 33.5 million for Hamilton. Verstappen has gone up by 0.2 million since the last race in his cost. Next to those numbers are your qualifying and race streaks. In order to get a chevron for the qualifying or the race streak, you have to finish in the top 10. And once you do that 5 races in a row, you'll get bonus points. And so this will quickly show you who's done well in those regards. For the constructors, you need to have both drivers from that team finishing in the top 10 to be able to get a chevron. And so they get a bonus after 3 races. And the last thing is the percentage owned. So for example, Hamilton, who costs 33.5 million, has not had a price change since last week. He has a chevron for qualifying and race streak, and he is on 29% of all Fantasy Formula One teams. So Dad, what are some of your reactions to the raw data in the dynamic pricing?
Well, initially I would have thought that Hamilton would be on more teams, but I guess that's when you have to weigh the price of the constructor versus the price of a number one driver.
True. As you can see, he's 33.5 million. Mercedes is 37.9 million. So Mercedes, which is taking both drivers together, is barely 4 million more. So that's how much Hamilton is including all the points for Mercedes. Whereas, for example, if you go down to Alpine, they're 15.2. Alonso is 15.4. A driver is worth more than his constructor. What do you think about that, bro?
So you have to understand that the constructors is a combination of both of your drivers. If there is a lot more faith in one of the drivers and maybe not so much in the second one, then it would probably make sense that the constructor itself would not be worth as much. Alonso is a champion. He's driven with this team for many years. He understands it very well. They expect a lot from him. Even though he didn't finish the last race, there's a lot of expectations that from here on out, there will be a lot of good things coming from him. It seems a little odd that there would be a very similar price, but like I said, it's both drivers. And so you have to understand that.
To those listening, when he meant that he's been driving with them for a very long time, this is his 3rd stint with this Renault outfit. Of course, they're called Alpine for this season. But yes, he won his 2 championships with Renault. He went back to them, and now he's going back to them once again. Even though this is his first racing season with Alpine, he took 2 years off. But if you look at him, he's gone down in price by 0.2 million. Ocon's going down in price by 0.2 million, as well as Alpine down in price by 0.2 million. So overall, because of how the race went, their prices have been dropping. Now, what do you guys think? Something that really surprised me is if you look over to the constructors, the top 2 owned constructors is Red Bull with 31% of all teams, and then McLaren, which is 30%. Mercedes is only at 12%. So why do you guys think that McLaren is picked on roughly 1/3 of all teams?
It seems like this would be a very simple solution. When I was picking my team, the very first question is, do I go with Mercedes or do I go with Hamilton? And regardless to which one you pick, you know that they're going to be taking a giant chunk out of your remaining money allotment. So as you'll see, Red Bull is 11 million cheaper and McLaren take another 8 million off of that. It's about what you're getting versus what your cost is. Mercedes is obviously a solid choice, but you have to ask, is 37.9 million worth it? And as you can see, most people are leaning away from that.
That's a good point, especially if people believe the McLaren with the Mercedes engine is going to outperform. It's costing 18.9 million. That is considerably less than the other team.
Gives you more options for your other drivers. When you have to plug in 5 other things, that money can make a big difference. It gives you a lot more flexibility.
Something that we want to point out here is if you are having a fantasy Formula One team and you want to take full advantage of that team, you want your team value to go above $100 million. That way, when you sub out a driver, you can still get up to that cap. Our biggest movers are Verstappen with 0.2 million increase, Leclerc, the biggest, 0.4 million increase, and he is looking like he's going to continue to rise over the next week and a half. Norris with a 0.2 million increase, Gasly with a 0.1 million increase, and Tsunoda with a $0.3 million increase. So if you had any combination of those drivers on your team, it is very likely that they're going to raise at least by $500,000 to $1 million by the next race. What do you guys think about these particular drivers? Why are they so highly rated?
Probably because of what they showed in their race and thinking that they would be consistent and continue to improve.
So, for example, Leclerc, you think that he's 30%, he's 1/3 of every team. So you're saying people think that Leclerc is going to qualify well and he's probably going to stay within the top 10. So he's going to get a decent amount of points. And so his value is going to continue to rise.
Tsunoda was obviously a surprise after the first race. I'm expecting that a lot of people are going to expect that again from him. And at 9.1 million, you'll see that 30% believe that he's going to be worth the amount that he's costing.
And that is our initial thoughts on the dynamic pricing as it stands. We're going to kick it over to our Google Sheet. This is a Google Sheet that I have made from scratch, and I want to just highlight something. These numbers under the W column, or S for sentiment, the redder it is, the more likely they are to lose their price by 0.1 million, and the greener it is, the more likely it is. And I update this every day. And right now, Tsunoda is looking like he's got a 96% sentiment that he's going to go up in price by another 0.1 million. And Alonso, 77% that he's going to drop. Hamilton might drop. He has not dropped this last week, but over the course of last week, he's been rising steadily. So it's looking like his price might drop next week. And if you're wanting to get Hamilton, maybe you'll swing and get him. Ocon, 85% chance that he's going to drop again. Sainz, a negative 78%. He looks like his price is going to drop, which is interesting because he has not had any adjustment to his price. What do you guys think? Do you think Hamilton will actually end up dropping his price at all?
That's really hard to say for sure. He always is very consistent, and we pretty much always expect the same thing from him. So I'm not going to say with 100% certainty that would happen. I don't think we have enough information to know for sure.
True. I'm still trying to figure out the data behind this, and that's why I'm taking a close look at it. Sentiment might be based off of people wanting the driver. So it's not purely off of performance, but also the percentage owning that driver and if there's a sudden change. But that is pure hypothesis, which is why on the Google Sheet we have under X how much they currently cost. PP $M under column Z represents points per million. So for example, Hamilton, he earns roughly 1.34 points per $1 million, which is actually pretty considerable because his value is at 4.1%. That means that he is scoring 4% more than he is costing you. And 29% of the people own him.
So one of the things I was thinking about is there might be a question on whether or not he can continue to get the pole position or if Verstappen can maintain getting the pole position, which would bring down Hamilton's value.
So you're thinking that if it looks like in practice session 1 and 2 that Verstappen is going to get pole position or have a strong race again, people might stop having Hamilton on their team to try to scoop up Verstappen, and then his price is going to go down as a result.
Yes.
Good point. I posted a video and you can check it out on the channel. It's called 3 Secrets to the Bahrain GP. I'll be doing another video before the Imola GP. And my value pick for last race was Norris. His sentiment is 42% that he's going to increase another million. He's already increased by 0.2 million. I posted a video before last race called 3 Statistical Secrets to the Bahrain GP. I'll be posting another one right before the Imola GP. And my value pick driver for last race was Lando Norris. And he stayed true to that prediction.
And if you'll see, he's actually one of the highest chance to go up this week. That's something to consider if you're on the fence about what you're going to pick for Imola.
If you're trying to pick him up, you want to do it sooner rather than later because, as Bro said, his price is going to continue to go up. His points per million is 2.18, the highest of all the drivers. And his value is at 5.6%, which is also the highest. That means he's getting you 5% more points than you are being charged per million. And he is owned by 54% of the league. So that means half of the league has him on their team. And if you're considering trying to pick him up, well, you better do that before more people pick him up, or his price will continue to raise. Or if you get him now, his ceiling will continue to raise, and then you'll be able to have a higher cost cap. That's the main things that we're going to focus on the Google Sheet. That will be updated daily. You can check the link in the description if you would like to be able to look at the raw numbers under the Performance tab. Now we will go over to our league. Would like to give a shout out for the F1 Fantasy Pitwall League. Right now, going over the course of the whole season, we have 12 teams entered. Thank you to everyone who's joined. It is a hiccup. If you still want to join, you can. You'll just be at a deficit since you won't have the points from the first week. But hold on to your hats. We've got a solution for that. Right now, it's a tie for first place. Myself with 191 points, and then Gianluca. The funny thing is that he and I have the exact same team. Verstappen, we turboed Norris, we have Sonoda, Giovinazzi, Russell, and Mercedes as the constructor. So it's all going to come down to how we do subs or how we are going to do our turbos moving forward. But I wanted to give that shout out. I'd feel honored if you want to copy my picks. One of my teams actually copied someone else on Reddit because he had such an interesting strategy. He was able to get both Verstappen, Perez, and Red Bull all on the same team. If they end up becoming the championship winners this season, they're going to rack in a lot of points. But let's kick over to Fantasy League for the Imola GP. If you want to participate with us in a one race challenge, you can follow the Pitwall-Imola GP. Here's the league code. We'll put the link in the description. Recognize it is case sensitive. It'll be one race, so don't worry. After this is over, we'll make a new one. And the reason why is because we want you to be able to go head-to-head with us in our pit strategy, and we will shout out the winner in our next podcast after the race. Of course, then you can not worry about that league after that because I will make a new one for the next race. This way we can get the full season, but then we can get these race challenges, and that will be our great pit strategy. How do you feel about that, Dad, since you weren't able to get in the first race?
I like it much better. I'm not sure I like the idea of joining and being 137 points down. So I like the idea of one race and each person is on the same footing with each race.
You don't think you could rise up and slash that deficit?
Oh, I could slash it, but I definitely wouldn't get first place. They were like 190 some points.
Okay.
191 points would be hard task to overcome. So yes, that's why we want to make that so that you get a one race challenge. We want to give very appreciative thanks to all of you who have subscribed to our channel. 26 total. We are at a quarter-century mark. And we got our very first comment on the last podcast. So I want to give a shout out to Melissa. Said, nice podcast. Max said, give me equal machinery to Lewis and I will beat him straight up. He had a faster car and lost ... the championship. Ooh.
Ooh. That was 4 dots, by the way. That's ... the championship. ...
That's a little bit of a prophetic comment to say, but what are your thoughts, bro, about Max, Hamilton being in the same machinery, and then the Red Bull being potentially stronger this season?
It definitely did look like the Red Bull had a very strong machine this last race, and I'm obviously very excited. This last race was very close. It actually more probably came down to strategy in the pit than it did to the actual machines themselves. I don't know if I'd say that, I think it's a little too early to say anything about him losing the championship. Definitely, it's going to hurt. It's going to sting. That race was basically Max's, and just it didn't go that way. If they had the same machine, I could see Max definitely giving Lewis a run for his money. He obviously does it with the Red Bull, same machine. I could see that one going either way, but I would think it would be interesting to watch, to be honest.
Well, To jump on that, we've seen that there's a potential cursed second Red Bull seat. If they had the same machinery, is that a machine designed for Hamilton's driving style or Verstappen's driving style? Because if it's designed for Verstappen's driving style, then Hamilton may not be able to drive it. We've seen this with Vettel. When he was in Red Bull and Ricciardo came in, he suddenly didn't perform as well. Or then when Leclerc came into Ferrari, he didn't perform as well. It's this idea that if the car isn't designed how you like it, for example, Michael Schumacher, when he came back out of retirement to Mercedes, it suited Nico Rosberg's setup better than his. Being equal machinery is like a misnomer, right? Because Red Bull is designing the car around Verstappen and Mercedes is designing the car around Hamilton. And so it's actually better that they're on opposite teams. Moreover, if they're on the same team, team orders would be a nightmare. We already see what happens to Bottas. Imagine if Verstappen and Hamilton were on the same team trying to figure that out.
Imagine if Verstappen had to be in the pit for 10 seconds because of a messed up tire change. Oof.
What I'm looking forward to is seeing, since Red Bull has added Perez, see how Perez versus Bottas, and see whether or not Perez can start getting Verstappen some advantage in the pits and some of those other strategies that Bottas has been giving to Hamilton. And so I think it'll be interesting to watch him mix it up in the next few races if Perez matures as well as I think he will.
And that's a good point because Perez looked really good. Starting pretty much at the back of the track, he really got far up there. And next race, if he's in a better position, could be a lot more going on, flip-flopping between Red Bull and Mercedes in the top four.
That's a good point. Bottas at this moment, even if he doesn't want to be called the wingman, he is being used strategically to help Hamilton. And like you said, the second driver for Perez, if he's not as fast as Max, they're going to use him strategically to block the Mercedes. Because let's face it, if both of the Red Bulls last race were as fast as Max was, Hamilton would not have won that race. Because you would have had two Red Bulls at the front. And then they would have been able to split their strategy so that Hamilton would have had to have passed at least one of them on track with fresh tires. And then the other one would have had that buffer. That's why we have to watch live sports, because on any given Sunday, that's a phrase we would say in American football, any given Sunday, anything can happen. Now on to our next main news topic. The Melbourne, or the Australian Grand Prix, is getting a change for a few of the different corners going into this. And to preface this, before we go in, my bro and I, during quarantine last year, got big into the games made by Codemasters. And I actually got a driving wheel so that I could drive the different tracks. I absolutely hated the Australian Grand Prix, and I love the Bahrain Grand Prix. I know, my driving style was so much better for Bahrain compared to Australia, but he, on the other hand, loves the Australian Grand Prix. You want to let them know, what do you love about that track?
So the thing I really love most about the Australian Grand Prix is that I've played all of the Formula One games that were made by Codemasters going all the way back to 2010. Australian Grand Prix has been the first track in almost every season since. So I've gotten very acquainted with it. It's something that's almost become second nature. It always starts and you always remember all of the turns.
This is the article by Formula1.com, and I'm just going to scroll down so we can see some of the pictures. Just tell me, what are your thoughts about this whole idea that they're changing public roads around this park for racing?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually really just crazy if you think about it. This is a street race. So when they change parts of the track, what they're doing is they're actually changing the roads themselves. That's not, I guess, crazy to think about. They are repaving it, so this would be the best time to change if you were. But the fact is, for a race, they are changing actual roads in real life in Australia. And that just blows my mind. I think that's so cool.
Looking back at the track, it looks like they're smoothing out corners 1, 3, 6, 15, so that they're not so kinky, and it'll give more opportunities for potentially overtaking or battling. But the big chicane, which would have been 10 and turn 9, that goes into the wide left fast section, they've just taken that out and they're smoothing that out completely. Now, bro, what are your thoughts about that chicane being removed?
I'm going to say that it could definitely be a good change. The turn usually comes to a crawl. You slow down a whole lot, and it's not exactly like a hard turn by any stretch of the imagination. Cutting it out and going just straight into speed and then more speed gives them slightly more room to actually do some faster competition, maybe a little bit more passing.
Yeah.
As long as I keep 11 and 12, 11 and 12 is my favorite ones.
I absolutely hated the turn 9-10 chicane. I'm actually glad that they removed that, because then I can immediately whip it across 8. I'm speaking from driving in the game. You could whip it across turn 8 and just carry that speed, but people are going to try to passage it. I just know it through 11 and 12. So that's going to be interesting. And then, of course, after that high speed, they're kinking up turn 13 more so that you actually get that overtaking opportunity instead of just a 90-degree turn. This will be very interesting. It is reported that it's going to save up to 5 seconds a lap. So this is going to be a really fast circuit.
Yeah, turn 13 is definitely going to be interesting. Turn 13 is usually a little bit more rounder of a corner. With the more hard braking, it'll be interesting to see if drivers will be able to take advantage of that situation and maybe do a little bit more passing in it. I'm excited to see what that'll result in.
And your thoughts, Dad? I know you're not as connected with this track as Bro is. What are your thoughts about them taking out all these little kinks and trying to smooth out the race course more?
I think it'll be more fun to watch, because I don't like it when they come to basically a screeching halt. And so I think it'll be more fun for me to watch.
And you bring up a very good point. You need momentum or low speed corners or medium speed corner variability to have those overtaking opportunities. If every time you go into a corner, it's just like you said, coming to a straight stop, how do you ever actually catch somebody, right? You need corners that have an opportunity to maybe take a different line and you don't come to a complete stop. So that if I'm going, let's say 2 miles per hour a little faster than you going into the corner, it'll actually make a difference coming out of the corner. If we all have to go practically to stop, then it doesn't really matter if I'm able to go around that corner a little faster. Potentially putting another DRS zone in there.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. The inclusion of a DRS zone could make this a bigger opportunity for actual passing. See if you can make your move before 11 and 12.
And there we have it. That was a great discussion on some fantasy Formula One statistics, the news that's going around the league. And if you want to be a part of our discussion, you can always leave a comment, hit that subscribe button or the bell notification so you can know when we post once a week. We record Monday nights, we post Tuesday mornings. And until next time, we'll see you on the pit wall. I've been your host, Jeanmark, and my amazing Knights in Racing Armor, my bro Dominick, and my father, David. Until next time, see ya.